What's going on, everybody? Well, welcome back to another episode of the J Area Podcast. My name is Jose Ramos Jr. And typically, when I run these episodes of the J Area Podcast, I like to have an idea, an outline of what it is I'm going to be saying on each episode. I try to have a clear, linear ideal of how I want to format these and how I'm going to speak about what it is I'm going to speak about. And truthfully, of that matter, each week I go through it and I think to myself, what is something that I want to share with the audience? What's something that I want to go public with, whether it is a story of mine from the past or current, whether it's ideas or thoughts, opinions that I have regarding sports, movies, pro wrestling, or whatever the topic at hand is. And this week I thought I would do something a little bit differently. I know in recent memory I've had some guests on the podcast, and in the last couple of weeks I haven't. It's been kind of more personal, and the things I get to share that I really want to talk about on my own time and kind of share with all of you in a public forum. But with this episode, there's a lot of significance with it, whether many people know or not. I thought I would just go ahead and improv. Go ahead and just freeball it, if you will, and see what sticks. This episode really is an opportunity to reflect. It's a way to look back while also looking forward in many aspects of my life. And I think that this podcast has been a great opportunity to do so. I know early on in the podcast, I had expressed my hope that this would allow me to connect with a lot of people that I've either A, haven't kept in touch with in some time now, or B, connect with new people that I never thought I would be connecting with. And I feel like it has done that for me. I've been running this now for what seems to be nearly 2 years. And in recent time, I've been seeing a lot of growth and a lot of improvement, not only in terms of my productivity, my consistency, but also in the viewership, in the views, in the succession of time that I have seen over the course of these 2 years. And not only growing the channel, growing the content that I'm producing, but also just growing as an individual. These last 2 years working on the podcast and now on the YouTube channel have really shown me a lot of things that I'm grateful for. And I feel like that's something to be shared with a lot of people who are aspiring to do something with their lives, whether it be a hobby, whether it be a career choice, whether it be school, or anything for that matter. And that's something that I've always prided in myself, is being able to express my thoughts and opinions in a way that many people can connect with. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have different backgrounds and environments and circumstances that bring us to where we are. But ultimately, it's the relationships, it's the connections that we developed that help create the environment that we're living in, if that makes any sense. So the basis of this podcast, again, the basis of this YouTube channel, has always been to connect. That's what the J Area has been founded upon. An area in which we all can share things, whether we like it or not. We have contrasting beliefs, contrasting opinions, but we can always talk about it with one another and help create a conversation. And that's why if you look throughout the course of my YouTube channel, you see me talking about movies, you see me talking about sports, you see me talking about the Niners, Warriors, pro wrestling, you name it. I've probably talked about it because these are all things that have been focal points of my life. And I open it up to everyone in the public domain because I feel comfortable with it. And early on, if you were to go back in time and see the content that I produced, whether it was the early episodes and the genesis of the Two Beans in a Pod that I did with Jared, my younger brother, moving into the J Area podcast when it was about sports and then movies, to now what it has become, me bringing in guests such as Daniel, such as Jared, and also just talking about a wide variety of things. I've expanded it into almost a variety show to where I'm just opening it up to talking about whatever I want. And I feel like it's not only helped me, but I feel like it's helped people around me become a lot more comfortable with who they are and what they want to talk about. Because in this world of social media and the internet, people have become so selective about what they want to share with the world, essentially. Or vice versa. Some people tend to overshare. And I think it's a fine line to work with, whether it be social media, whether it be the internet, or whether it be in real life. We all are very selective about what we want to share with everyone. And I feel like it shouldn't go unnoticed, the power and the impact that has on other people's lives, whether we realize it or not. Because what we're able to share with one another and what we feel comfortable enough to talk about with those that we're close with or that we're not close with, we're influencing lives. Now, for the good or the bad, that's up to be debated. But I know from what I've heard and in the feedback that I've been given regarding this podcast, regarding the content that I've been producing, I've been getting a lot of positive feedback and praise from my family and friends, saying that they keep up with it, that they like what they hear. And that's great. That's all well and dandy, and I appreciate it. It's always nice to hear good things, but I've also heard criticism, and I've also had complaints or points being made in order to improve the overall product, and I welcome that as much as I welcome the praise. In fact, I kind of prefer it because I feel like nobody's perfect and nothing at the end of the day is perfect, and so we should always strive for perfection without really reaching it, because as soon as we realize that everything's perfect, well then what is there else to do? And I don't know about you, but me, I've always been in the belief that we should continue to improve ourselves. We should always continue to grow. We are never at our finished product. We are never at a point in our lives where we can say everything's great or everything's perfect or everything's finished. No, it's never finished. It's never done. We keep moving forward, because if you're not moving, you're not growing. And I feel like that's at this point where I've hit with this podcast. It's been a great opportunity for me to really come out of my shell and open up about a lot of things I didn't think I could open up about, or frankly anybody would care about. But over the course of time and energy and production that I've placed in this podcast, that's not the case. There are some people out there who would like to hear the things I have to say, who have tuned in and week out. And I appreciate you guys. I thank you guys. And it's because of you that I've continued to move on and keep producing the content that I've been producing. And it'll only get better. Over time, it'll get better. And I can look back at the original content that I produced, and just like anybody else, I cringe. I look at it and I think, oh, I could have done this better. Maybe I should have moved the camera this way, or I should have edited this way, or I should have added this or taken away that. And I'll always be my biggest critic, and I feel like a lot of people can resonate with that. It's like I said, we strive for perfection without ever really attaining it. But if you don't look back and cringe at the original content that you produce or who you were a year ago, then you're not growing, you're not improving. We should always cringe at who we were in the past, because that just shows us that we're growing, that we're demonstrating that acknowledgement, that ability to adapt and to become a better person, a better family member, a better friend, just overall just better. And I think that's very important in all aspects of life, whether it's professional, personal, you name it. This podcast has really given me a lot of things, whether I was ready to accept it or not. It gave me an outlet to connect with all of you guys. It gave me an outlet to become the person that I've always wanted to be, because growing up, I know people can relate to it. We have our insecurities. We have these self-esteem issues where we may not be comfortable with who we are at that moment of our life, whether it's the way that we walk, the way that we talk, the way that we go about our business. And I know for me, the way I blanketed it or covered it up was through humor. I would make jokes, whether it was about the situation or make light of a hostile environment, if you will, or just self-deprecating jokes. I would always make those kind of jokes to kind of lighten up the mood, because if I can make other people laugh and make other people smile, that's something good. I don't know about you, but I like laughing. I like to smile. So to see that kind of positive impact on others, that's always been such a goal and an aspiration of mine, whether it was with my friends, whether it was with my family, or like I said, whether it's with you guys. And through this forum, I may not be able to see you guys, but to see the number side of it, if that makes sense, and how many people are tuning in and what's the average viewership, it demonstrates that, okay, there's something out there for everybody. And as I mentioned, it'll only continue to get better. Because over the course of time, you are going to learn how to do things properly. You're going to learn how to do things better. And I feel like that's just the basis of what this podcast has been, is an opportunity to show my growth, not only as a person, but as a podcaster, as a content creator, and just overall as a student of the game. Because I don't know if I ever shared it on the podcast publicly, but I went to university. I attained a bachelor's degree in communications because it was the most broad degree I could find, and it would have different avenues and different opportunities for me to branch out in. And also it lent itself into what the original goal was, and that was to be like a sports journalist or sports broadcaster and just talk about sports. Just talk about the thing that brought me closer together with my family. It was the one thing we always looked forward to, whether it was the NBA, whether it was the NFL, the WWE, boxing, you name it. It was really the basis of a lot of what my family grew up on. Because not only did it teach us the morals and the ideals of teamwork, but dedication, hard work, competitiveness, all these core values that are associated with sports is what helped drove me, my siblings, my parents to be the people that we are today. So again, going back and seeing how the podcast has changed, how I've improved and changed, it's for me, I find it to be a proud moment. And this is me, Jose Ramos Jr., talking not as the podcast host, not as the content creator, but as a man, just talking to you guys truthfully and candidly about what these last couple of years have been like. Because there's been times where, as I mentioned, self-esteem wise and confidence wise, we kind of look at ourselves and wonder, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing everything that I can be doing? What am I doing wrong? We look for all these answers and these opportunities to right the wrongs that are in front of us. And it's not that simple. It's never been that simple. Life has always been a learning process, no matter what you're going to go through in your life, whether it's an obstacle, whether it's in your head, you're going to encounter these things that are causing you to doubt yourself. And that's okay. But you have to remember to follow the two things. You got to follow your heart in knowing what's right, and knowing what you want as a person. Again, relating to your goals, relating to your own personal values and morals. But at times you are going to have to follow your head. You're going to have to make sense of what's going on around you and not just act all willy-nilly. You have to act logically while also keeping intact those emotions that you keep when you're doing the things that you love. And for this episode, it's really just going to be a tangent about me talking about everything I've been through, whether good or bad, And I know I don't want to bore anybody with, personal stories, but I feel like that's what this podcast has grown into since its inception, is personal stories. Being able to connect with people that we never would have connected with. And I've kept a lot of my life private by choice, because I've always said that although my life is an open book, I'm not going to share much information without being asked. If someone asked me a question, I'll answer it. It's no problem. I got nothing to hide. But who am I to be putting out business out there that people don't care about, or that frankly isn't their business? So I'm very selective about who and what I tell to certain people, or lack thereof. But this episode 2 gives me an opportunity to be reflective. And by the time this episode comes out, it will have already been a year since my family lost my father. And it's always been very difficult. And I know there's people out there who may have or have not endured what it's like to lose a family member, especially someone so close. So for those that do connect with it, I empathize with you. I cannot say that I know exactly what you're going through, because all of our situations are different and they're unique. Our relationships with these people are different and they're unique. But this podcast really has always been a tribute to my father. He was always the one that motivated me to be a better man, and I will always give credit to both he and my mom for really providing me the blueprint on what it was to be a decent person, a hardworking person, someone who was responsible and respectful. I will always give them their credit. Any opportunity that someone gives me a level of praise or the smallest hint of a compliment, I will always deflect to them. I will refer to them as they are the ones that laid down the foundation. They are the ones that laid down the blueprint on who I am. I quite literally would not be here without them, both in a physical, biological, mental. I would not be here. So I always give them their credit. I try to give them their credit. But what it meant to be a decent man, a responsible man, who else is a kid supposed to look to but their dad? He led by example. He left a legacy, and I plan to honor that. I plan to honor that in any way that I can, whether it's through this podcast, whether it's through my job, whether it's through my friendships or my relationships. Who am I to live a life and take advantage of all the things that he built, of all the things that they built together, and not continue to grow, and not continue to build upon what has already been built upon? I am the third member in my family to be named Jose Ramos, named after my father and he after his. And anybody that knows me, they know that I'm very proud of that. I've always been very proud of that. Not only do I bear their name, I bear a strong resemblance to them. If you put the three of us in a line, you would be able to pinpoint these guys are related. To the point where there would be times I'd go out with my dad to the store, and some people would mistake us for brothers. It's a strong resemblance, and again, something I'm very proud of. But this last year has been quite the year for a lot of people in my family. We've all mourned, we've all dealt with his loss in our own way. But I would like to take solace in knowing that we've all been together. At the end of the day, if we're all gonna be in pain, we at least have one another to console. We have that security. We have that sense of unity in one another. And I know right now, if I needed to, I can go talk to my sister. I can go talk to my mom. I could talk to my brother. I could call any one of my uncles, my aunts, my grandparents, my cousins. They're there. And although I might not reach out as much as I should, I would hope that they know that I'm there if they were to need me, of course. But at the same time, I don't want to, overstep my bearing and put myself out there if I'm not needed. But I'm always there. I'm on call. I'm on duty like any doctor would be, even though I'm not a doctor. And that's just something that he always taught us. My father was very much a family man who loved getting everyone together, whether it be for big things or trivial things. It didn't matter, as long as he had his family together. And that's something that I take great pride in. I would always tell my younger siblings, I would tell them that no matter what we do in our life, the moment we step foot out of this household and we go out into the real world, the actions that we do, the choices that we make are immediately a reflection of he and mom. Because they are the ones that raised us, that taught us, that loved us, that nurtured us. Everything we do will have a direct link to them. So at the bare minimum, what you could do is something honorable, something that will make them proud. And it's been like that since day one. I don't know why. I have maintained that sense of responsibility or maturity, whatever you want to call it. But I've always recognized the importance of reputation and what it means to build a reputation of respect. And it's like I said, as I was little, I just knew I wasn't going to be the one to tarnish a legacy that they build. The two things I can say about my grandfather and my father is that they are two of the most respected men I have in my life, that I've ever met in my life. You would be very hard pressed to find someone who didn't have a decent thing to say about them. And that's a lot to live up to. It's a lot of pressure. Maybe more pressure that I put on myself. But that's just reality for me. You strive for perfection without ever achieving it. So to be pushed into this position of bearing the name, of bearing the resemblance, and the task of possibly continuing on a legacy, it's a lot. You can think about it. It's a lot. For most people, maybe they don't think as hard about it as I would, but I like to say I would put a lot of pressure on myself. And anybody that I've worked with or would consider a friend, when they seek counsel and they seek advice and they tell me that things are hard, I would tell them that sometimes pressure is good, because with the right amount of pressure, any piece of coal can be forged into a diamond. And I think that's important to realize, that sometimes adversity is needed. And for my family, we've enjoyed that time and time again. And of course, this isn't a pity party. This isn't me trying to compare trauma with anybody else. It's just my truth. It's what I've lived. And it's an update for you guys, because I want you guys to get to know me. I want you guys to really know what makes me tick, and the things that I like or the things I don't like. And if you agree with them, fantastic. Subscribe, like, share, all the jargon that YouTube ever tries to offer you. And if not, hey, I'm sorry, but stick around. Maybe we'll talk about something that you do like, something that you're interested in. Or maybe you want to voice your opinion and tell me why I'm wrong, or why I could be swayed. I'm very open-minded. I listen to everybody. I have my own opinions, don't get me wrong, but I'm always open to hearing out other people. That's what I've always done. That's what I've always learned, and that's what I've always been taught. Again, referring to them. So with it now being a year, to know who I was, 365 days ago in comparison to today, I would like to think, in terms of my values and my morals, very similar in terms of how in line I was then. But I do think certain things have been really honed in on. The importance of time. The importance of time spent with family. The importance of time that we have on this earth. And what do we want to do with that time? What do you plan on leaving behind when your time has come? Because I know for him, he never really gave himself the credit. He would tell me firsthand that he wasn't the best student. Yet he was one half of the greatest teaching duo that I could have ever, had. He never gave himself that credit. But I look back and I can pinpoint so many different lessons that he taught myself, that he taught my younger sister, my brother. Without even intending on teaching us, he led by example. He was the kind of guy who would take his shirt off his back to give to someone in need. And that's the kind of person I want to strive for. That's the kind of guy that I want to be. He would tell me, well, he wouldn't just tell me, he would tell, my siblings and I, that his goal, his main purpose as a father, was to ensure that his children, us, came out better than he ever was to ensure that we had everything he didn't have, but at the same time be better versions of who he was. And I always told him, hey, if I could be half the man that he was, I'd be a made man. I never not once got tired of telling him how proud I was, how much I loved him, how much I cared for him, all the way to the end. And I owe that to him for the time that he sacrificed, for the time that he worked. And he never complained. So if you see me out in the public world, 9 times out of 10, someone will ask, hey, how you doing? How are you? And I'll say, I'm doing good, I'm doing fine, I can't complain. Because at the end of the day, who am I to complain? My father had every reason to complain. You know, being that he had dealt with cancer for the last 8 years. His bones ached. His scars were sore. He had a shunt and a plate in the back of his head that ached when it was cold. And yeah, you could see him physically wince, and you could see him, physically have these reactions that would tell you he's uncomfortable. He's in pain. But he never really complained about it. So who am I to complain? I have my health. I have my family. I have a wonderful support system. And I would like to think I have a decent head on my shoulders. What do I have to complain about? So when I hear people out, in the real world, who complain about the smallest of things, trivial things, I just smile. Because it's like, there are a lot bigger things out there than the issues that you're dealing with, that I'm dealing with. And again, that's not to compare people's trauma or compare people's situations, but sometimes it's good to just take a step back and think, is what I'm complaining about worth it? A lot of the times when I do this podcast, I look at it as a way to just vent. Subconsciously, if anything. And I feel like I'm talking to myself. But I know there's at least one person out there who resonates, who sympathizes, empathizes, and relates to what I'm saying. This podcast, I'm hoping, becomes something of a safe haven for not only you, the listener, but for me as well. Because I mentioned having those insecurities and having those self-doubt. It's not uncommon. We all deal with it. But I think you can see, based off of the early episodes in comparison to now, I've now become more comfortable in my skin. I've now come to grips with the pros and cons of being on YouTube. I've come to grips with my flaws or my good qualities. I am who I am, and that's enough for me. I'm a proud son to a fantastic mother and father. I could not be any more blessed than I've already been, with the family that I've been born into, again, with the support system that I have, the friends that I've gained along the way, and the experiences that and have helped molded me into the individual that I am here, sitting in front of you at my desk in front of a webcam. So if there's anything that you can take away from this podcast, not only this episode, but the podcast in general, my hope is that you continue to be you. Continue to be great. Continue to be grateful. Because ultimately, there are two things I feel we should be striving for in our lives. One, it's self-fulfillment. It's being able to say, I did that. Whether you failed or you succeeded, you can say, I did that. I tried. I gave it my best shot. That's number one. But number two, and this one means the most to me, is to say that you gave it your best shot while still staying true to who you are. No matter what it is you choose to follow, whether it's your dreams, whether it's a relationship, whether it's betting your physical health, give it 110%. Because I promise you, at the end of it, you can't regret giving 110%, but you certainly can regret not giving 110%. Give it all you got. Because I know he did. And I know that I will going forward. So I just want to thank you guys again for joining me on the J Area podcast. Kind of a real personal episode. And I think I was due for one, certainly for the benefit of myself, but also in terms of opening up to you guys, the viewers. I cannot express my thanks, my gratitude towards you all enough for continuing to listen to the podcast. For continue to listen to the podcast. You guys got me tripping over my own words now because of my emotion. But for also voicing your opinions, good or bad. I welcome it. I say bring it on. If it's great, great. If it's not, great. Because it's like I said, you got to take with the good and the bad with the bad, and continue to keep moving forward. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jose Ramos Jr. Follow the podcast, J Area Podcast, on YouTube or on Spotify. The goal for YouTube is to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I think it is possible in terms of the trends that we've been going forward. I genuinely think it's something possible. And with your guys' help, we can grow the J Area into something bigger and better like we haven't seen before. Again, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. You can find me on all social media outlets at JustJose_3. Again, much love, much appreciation. I will see you guys in the next episode. We'll see you then.